like a diamond, light 'em up in the dark. We know who we are, we're a big bright spark.
Hi, welcome back to the Voices Talk Show. Today we are going to be discussing the LGBTQ experience, and this is such an important conversation I wanted to bring to the table because I feel like there's such a necessity for it right now. It's a very important conversation to be having. I'm really excited to have my panel here with me today to talk about it. While I may not personally have experience or actual connection to LGBTQ, I think it's important to practice listening, and so that's a lot of what I'll be demonstrating today because I really want to give voices to the people who actually matter in these conversations. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cathy Hodges. I am a lifelong resident of Alexandria, on and off, and I am currently leading a group called LGBTQ and Allies here in Alexandria.
Hello, hello. My name is Scott Keehn. I'm a retired pastor in the community, and I've been here about 14 years. And actually, I've raised a child of color in this community, and it's great to be with you all today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm Nathan Reinbold. I'm the environmental coordinator for Pope Douglas Solid Waste. So I had went to school in Duluth and started getting more of an activist role. Back in the day, it already feels like a long time ago when laws are a lot different than they are now. So I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome back, Nathan, from episode 1. And let's just go ahead and get right into it. What has been your experience in our community in regards to the LGBTQ rights experience?
Well, my experience has been very good. I personally haven't felt any discrimination, but I know there's a lot of people that have said, you're going to get discriminated against, and we're here to help you. So there's been a lot of support in that area. I had 2 kids that went to school here in Alexandria, and they did get some bullying from others in their schools for having 2 moms, but you know, they had supportive friends in the community. So I think my experiences have been pretty good.
As a pastor here in town, I have had the pleasure of officiating at the first same-sex marriage, and Cathy and Patty, her spouse, were the couple that I married, and I have to say that that was a highlight of my career in ministry, and one that was not without some pushback from the public, and I would say that it was well worth the effort. I think we took some big steps forward together.
And my experience has been actually fairly well. When I lived in Duluth or St. Paul, I actually had more issues and more derogatory words called to me. Alexandria has actually been pretty welcoming. Sometimes when you see this, though, people are like, "Oh, what's your wife do?" And then so that you still have that kind of that little, anxiety of like, "Oh no, they're going to judge me or they're going to hate me now." But overall, it's been pretty good. Yeah.
You know, I have had some experiences though where, I had somebody driving by yelling out "fag," and I had to yell back, "We're not fags, we're dykes." I get it right, but and somebody spray painted a derogatory word on our camper, and so there's been some. I mean, we had our LGBT meeting at the church, and we had a protester out there with a picket sign, and but for the most part, it's been very positive.
Okay. Yeah. Also, so what are some of the most common misconceptions you think in terms of gender identity and sexual orientation?
Well, for me, the biggest misconception about the LGBT community is that we're other, and we're not. We're your friends, we're your family, we're your co-workers, we're members of the community, we're part of the church, we're just people. So I think the biggest misconception is, you meet I have to treat you differently, and don't. Right? We're just people.
Yeah, I would say the same. You know, as a pastor, I had 40 years of opportunities to share a message about loving thy neighbor. But what a lot of people, I think, failed to understand through all of those years and changes was that we're not talking about strangers. We're talking about members of the same human family. And that in itself is a truth. What we all really want is to be accepted for who we are, and not to have to pretend that we're something different than the dominant culture, our workplace, our church, our community. That's when we're at our best, I think, when we allow people to be who they are, created in the image of God.
And you don't have to work that much harder to kind of make, I assume, as a woman of color, you feel like there's a pressure that you have to do more, or you have to teach all the time, and it's just like you just want to just be. You know what I mean? And so if you're a productive member of society and you treat people well, that should be all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah, well spoken.
Yep, thanks.
And what do you guys think about like how we accept the LGBTQ community here in Alexandria? Are there things we should be doing or be more aware of?
You know, a lot of times we think that discrimination, because it hasn't happened to us, isn't happening. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a friend of mine just yesterday, and he told the story of how just 2 months ago he was fired from a local company because he was a gay man. Mm-hmm. And you're like,
that doesn't happen anymore.
That doesn't happen.
Is there a law?
Yeah. How can that happen? And why is that happening? And I know transgender people that have difficulty finding a doctor. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no sign on the door that says I'm transgender friendly or I'm LGBT friendly. I know how to talk about issues. So there are still areas in our community that we could do some work on.
Well, and healthcare has always been, kind of a touchy issue anyway, because it's like, yeah, if you go to the doctor and then they start asking questions, you still have that. Not as much with the younger generations, but older definitely. You kind of have those awkward moments. Like you don't know what you can share. You don't want to be judged, and things like that.
Right. Or the guy's going to go, especially some.
Oh, I'm not touching you, because
Yeah, I might catch something.
Yeah. And so you still have those feelings, or maybe it's just more paranoia now. But obviously in the history, that's occurred. You know what I mean?
You're right.
Well, that was one of the things Nathan and I were talking about before we started the panel, was there is a generational difference. Some of the older, like for myself, baby boomers and us older, the greatest generation of people, like your mother, have this fear of the other, and we're gonna make sure that we stay separate. And whereas the Gen X and the millennials are like, we're all just people. We're just fine. So when you go into healthcare and you have that older position, then you're having that. Whereas if you have a younger doctor, you feel more relaxed and able to communicate.
I actually understand that just from my perspective. This is an mostly older community, and I think that for me, it's been more like about exposure, it feels like, because a lot of the questions I would get or still get are very stereotypical. Mm-hmm. So I think it does make sense that I feel like when it comes to younger people, I've actually had like friends and new moms that I've gotten close to here in this community who've been like, I've never actually been friends or had the opportunity to sit and be around someone of color or even a black person, to be more specific. And it seems to always be like this really exciting kind of, but still like welcoming moment. Most of what I've gotten in terms of indifference in this community has been from much older people, and there's just a bit of a resistance. Why do you think that is?
If I could just spring off one of the comments you made about welcoming moments.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest mistakes I have made personally, and perhaps folks in my generation, is that silence is the same as affirmation.
Yes.
And it's very easy to sit back
agree.
and if you don't call out the discrimination, the put downs, the bullying, then in effect you've endorsed it.
Yes.
And so a radical welcome, which I subscribe to, means that you find the courage in your heart to say, if I were in your position, I wouldn't take that.
Yeah.
I'd want to speak up on your behalf because I'm an ally.
Yeah.
I got your back on
Yes.
this. And that's where the change happens, in the one-on-one conversations. And
and it comes back to it's not other, and we're all, at the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all living
Yes.
this same hard life. And I think that we forget about that when it comes to just specific issues. We forget that there is real lives behind the matter, and we're all just here living our best lives like the rest of you. And it's important to see the person before you see anything else.
Exactly. We all have our joys and our concerns, and that's universal. It doesn't matter if you're a person of color, it doesn't matter if you're LGBT, it doesn't matter if you're cisgender. It just doesn't matter. We're all, like you said, just trying to live life and live our best life and to be happy.
yeah, thank you.
I think it's important to also just say what it is that you feel is most important that you would want anyone to know. If just anyone here now, if you had the opportunity to say something about yourself or your community, what would it be?
I think the biggest message that I would like to share with other people is just treat each other with respect. Doesn't matter who you are. Love each other. Care about each other. Have compassion.
Ditto. You've said it beautifully.
Yeah.
If we could just remember that one golden rule, treating others as we would wish to be treated, I think we'd be a whole lot happier together.
So, I'm thinking about imaging and messaging in the community. Obviously June, maybe that's not obvious for everyone, but June is, Gay Pride Month.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if maybe City Hall had a rainbow flag next to the American flag during June, and then likewise for other months, like Native American month and African American month, women's rights. They have the ribbons and stuff for breast cancer or the yellow flags as well. But it'd be nice to just recognize all of the flags and ribbons.
I always think it's important to lead by example, and why not just go the extra mile and just make it a permanent thing?
Yeah.
Showing the rest of the communities around us and just representing Alexandria in our best way. I think that we're such a great community, and there's so much potential here to be way more progressive and way more diverse, and most of all, way more accepting of that. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Voices. Next week, we're going to be discussing immigration, so come back and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you to Lure Lake Bar for allowing us to film in your amazing facility. Check us out also on Facebook at Voices Talk Show, as well as Instagram at Voices Talk Show, and Twitter at Voices Talk Show. Thank you.
Like a diamond, light 'em up in the dark. We know who we are, we're a big bright spark. We know how to take the lead and we aren't afraid. Shake up all the rules, pretend like they will never